Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today I want to talk about the Greenskins, as a very important mod from Warhammer 2 has finally dropped, at least in my opinion, as I consider it to be quite essential. So what you can see here is vanilla Total War Warhammer 3, and yeah, there's a lot of units, there's a lot of different Greenskins, varying from goblins to orcs to monsters, but really, if you don't know, if you haven't played the tabletop, the Greenskins had one of the most varied army lists when it came to the tabletop, where you could really easily say that the Greenskins had more than the Warriors of Chaos when it came to variety. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? So two mods have dropped that form part of one. This is the expanded roster series, and as you can already tell, it's a lot bigger, which, you know, for the Greenskins is what you want. You've got 15 new units, some of them are variants, but they fit with the theme of the actual tabletop, and 2 hero choices plus 1 lord choice. So we're going to go over them and talk about them, because this just kind of gives you that feel that you're playing the Greenskin army book. Eventually we'll probably see this in vanilla in the future in the form of DLC, but until then, you know, mods will be here to kind of save the day, as when you want to play as a horde and you want themed armies, you kind of lean a little bit more flavor, as some of the factions just are kind of missing some things here and there. So the first hero choice you have is the Orc Big Boss. Yes, the generic Orc Big Boss, which is something that I know people have been asking for. It's not entirely needed, but yeah, it fits the theme in case you want to run with a normal Orc army. And yeah, he can buff up your Orcs, your biggunz, your cavalry too. So this is actually quite beneficial to you. There's also just some other skills just to make him a little stronger. He's nothing too special, but then again, you know, it's variety for the sake of variety, which if you play Greenskins, yeah, you kind of want anyway. The second hero choice you have, which is very much the same as the Savage Orc Big Boss. So yeah, very similar skills too. They kind of just focus on that. Ignore the details kind of showcase for the model there, as the helmet is actually fairly different. But yeah, it boosts up your Savage Orc units instead, your Savage Orc charge bonus, your melee attack. So if you want to focus on Savage Orc armies, this would be the hero for you. And I don't know about you guys, but like, I love Savage Orcs. I've always loved them on the tabletop. I've always thought they were just a big meme. And yeah, it's just nice to have an extra hero for your armies, especially that will boost up your Savage Orcs. The new Lord option you have is actually fairly different. This is the Forest Goblin Warboss, a faction which is woefully underrepresented, not just by CA. This has been a thing since GW. Forest Goblins were a thing, but then kind of just removed, which is a shame. But yeah, you know, this is a basic Lord option in case you want to run a Goblin army or a Forest Goblin army, as there's Forest Goblin units here. You can get it mounted on a Giant Spider, an Arachnarok, which is going to be quite helpful, as, you know, Arachnaroks are pretty strong, and it just adds to a little bit more flavor. Some of these units aren't going to be the best, I'm going to be very honest with you, but the idea is just to have variety, to be able to theme roleplay with it, you know? This is very important, especially when you're in a sandbox game. If you're familiar with this mod, then you know about the amount of units added. This is all the ones added so far. There might be more in the future, but it already adds to a lot of variety, even to the standard ones that you already use anyway. So I think this is a great thing to just jump into. So when you go into the Savage Orc Big Boss, I mean, it looks freaking awesome. It's got a great weapon, so it's armor piercing. It's got high physical resistance because it's a Savage Orc. In general, stats are pretty good. I like running it. I like playing around with Savage Orcs more than anything else, so it's just nice to have a extra bit of bonus there, just to give a little bit of a buff to my troops. The Orc Big Boss himself is a duelist character, so that might be quite useful if you want something to support Grimgor. I mean, Grimgor doesn't need too much support, so maybe Azag, you just want a melee character that's just there to kill off other characters. And it's pretty good all around, stats are just great, and, you know, it's got encourage. Like I said before, it's able to buff up your orcs and your orc cavalry too, so it's quite beneficial if you want a little bit of an extra bonus, you know? The Forest Goblin Warboss looks pretty cool. It reminds me of one of the old school miniatures that you'd get on the Arachnarok Spider. Well, it's not old school because it's still on rotation, but you know what I mean. And I'm fairly tempted to do a proper Forest Goblin only playthrough. I mean, he's got poison attacks, and so do your others. We're going to check them out soon. You've also got the ability to just spawn in some fanatics, which is going to be helpful. It would be kind of helpful if we had like Forest Goblin heroes too, but maybe in the future, you never know, as the expanded roster series is usually quite gargantuan. If you remember it from Warhammer 2, then yeah, it's a big mod. So When we start looking towards units, the first one we do have is the Savage Giant. So it's very much the same as the normal Giant, however it does have some better stats in some places. It's also got access to some high physical resistance because it's got access to War Paint, and I think this works out really well if you want to actually have a proper Savage Orc army. And if you haven't tried that before, especially with this mod, you definitely should because it's just really fun. So these might not be the most impressive, but they are very cheap. These are the Snotlings. So yeah, basic unit, very low stats, basically like a Skaven Slave. However, they are expendable and they're very cheap to run. The idea is just in case you need something just to defend for public order purposes, these work out very, very well, and you're not wasting money on anything else. Plus, you know, it's a shame that we got Snotlings through the pump wagons, but we just never got Snotlings as an actual unit. Here comes the Colossal Squig, which reminds me I really need to finish painting mine. It's been unpainted for a few years now. Anyways, this is a giant single entity unit. It's got armor piercing, it's anti-infantry, it causes terror, it can rampage though. It can rampage, keep that in mind, but this is a late game unit, which many people have been wanting anyway officially, mostly because, I mean, it's a giant squig, what's not to love? And yeah, good stats all around, quite good at deflecting enemy missiles because it does have a decently high missile resistance. And in general, it's just freaking cool. I love them. I just love them. Alright, so this is a second variant and it's just heavily armored. It's very much the same, just a bit better stats in the defensive department, which kind of works out. I mean, it looks freaking cool. We never really had one in the tabletop as far as I'm aware. We only had the normal Colossal Squig, but this is quite impressive. Honestly, I actually I'm tempted to kit bash my Colossal Squig to look like this. We're moving on to Black Orc variants, and there's two, and the thing is that we need to talk about this. On the tabletop, there was no such thing as a variant for the Black Orcs. Instead, when you took them to battle, as the battle phase commenced, you would decide what they were wielding. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen here in Total War, which is a bit of a shame. So variants exist for this reason. First up, we obviously have the dual weapon variant, which, you know, anti-infantry, just good for cutting down big swaths of foes and just general hordes and stuff like that, which obviously can be very useful. And then the second variant is just your defensive line, which is your Black Orc standard unit. And then again, you know, these guys are shielded, armored, well, heavily, you know. The fact is that if you want to play with Grimgore and you want more of a thematic play, I'm going to be saying thematic play a lot this video, as you can imagine. I mean, you want a full army of Black Orcs, not just great weapons. You want them with every weapon imaginable so they could do their damage. You won't get them with bows, though, as they're not really lore-friendly, barring one unit from the Dogs of War roster. But yeah, this is pretty much it. This is a massive thing, and you can just do a lot of damage with it. I mean, it's orcs, right? Then we've got a basic orc boys with spears, and you know what's really curious? A lot of people have been asking about a unit like this officially. I've seen this on the forums pop up every so often when a Greenskin topic shows up. So yeah, shielded, anti-large, charge defense against large foes. I know that a lot of people would think, well, we have the Goblins for that, but objectively these are better than the Goblins. The only thing is the Goblins will get their bonuses from, you know, Grom or Skarsnik, and if you want like more orcs and less Goblins, yeah, always useful. Alright, Savage Orcs with Spears. Once again, similar thing. If you want a Savage Orc only playthrough, or you want a Savage Orc army, it's always helpful to have some anti-large. The only thing I would say personally is I don't like the shields on them, mostly because they shouldn't have shields. They consider that un-orky by a lore point of view. But other than that, I mean, they look really cool. It's always nice to have. Savage Orcs were done dirty by CA because we still don't have a big stabber. So yeah, we'll have to deal with this. This one's quite useful too. So these are Savage Orc bigguns with clubs. So it's a great weapon. Armor piercing, anti-infantry, you know. So it allows you to have a little bit of an extra punch to your already powerful Greenskin punch. But again, for theming armies, very, very useful. And it's just nice to have variety. This is the thing, we've already had this with Champions of Chaos, where we've had so many units which are very much the same, just with a different mark to just make them a little bit different. And now I'm just saying, oh god, we need a Champions of Chaos DLC for the Greenskins. I would love that so much. Next we have bigguns with shields, so yeah, just a basic hand weapon. It's just to add a little bit more defensive units, especially if you can't really afford to go to Black Orcs just yet. It's nice to have these bigguns here just to be able to hold down the enemy. Obviously, this is your front line with everything else doing its main damage, whilst the bigguns can still do a decent amount of damage, but you know what I mean. It's just nice to have a shielded front line. Hill Goblins come in as a late game type of black orc in a sense for your goblin armies. And I think these were implemented in a White Dwarf magazine supplement, I think. I'm not 100% too sure. But either way, you know, shielded, anti-large, decent stats for a goblin, like overall good armor and all that. Keep in mind I'm comparing them to other goblins and clearly not orcs. But yeah, this adds in a lot of really big flavor just to have if you want to play a Scar Snake, or if a legendary modded Goblin Lord comes out, or, well, you know, Grom too, but Grom you kind of just focus on chariots, don't you? Well, chariots and archers. Next we have Night Goblin Spears, so there's not too much to talk about them here, but the thing is, it's really odd that we don't have these in vanilla. They were really popular on the tabletop. Night Goblins with spears and shields were really, really popular. So it's just odd. Like, don't get me wrong, I get it. They had the normal goblins with spears as the main spear unit, but Night Goblins, man. And lastly, we have 3 units of Forest Goblins, which they look really, really cool. And yeah, they're quite decent. Okay, so there's 3 variants. The first one is Sword and Board, you know, shielded, Vanguard deployment, expendable, and poison attacks too. I love the fact that they're expendable. And yeah, pretty decent stats for a Goblin. Keep that in mind. I know they're not good stats, but for Goblins, they're just perfectly fine. And yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much what you need if you want to do a themed army. The second variant itself is a spear version. Everything is very much the same, but the difference is that obviously it's anti-large and it just adds in a little bit more flavor, some variety. And yeah, I mean, I can't really compliment Forest Goblins too much. I mean, they're just basic goblins, but you know what I mean. The last variant itself being a bow variant, and you get poison attacks too on your bows. Not a lot of range, only 115, which is still pretty decent for a goblin, I'd say. A lot of ammo. I'm not sure if that's going to get nerfed in the future because it's 24 ammunition. But in general, like, yeah, I mean, it gives you the full roster that you need for a full forest goblin, because keep in mind that you have all the spiders, you've got the Arachnarok. There's just a lot to play with there. And I'd say, look, it's not the full complete thing. I mean, hell, this mod would have to have like 40, 50 more units if it was the case to just finish everything off. But to be able to theme up an army and just have like a proper forest goblin army, or just some extra flavor, if you like to mix and match, or a full black orc army, this is fantastic. It's 2 mods and they can be found in the description below. I'd honestly say check it out. And if you want to have a reason to play Greenskins, this is definitely the one. But let me know what you guys think about these orcs in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. And let me know what you think is missing. Like, there's a lot of missing Greenskins.